Snowflakes swirled around the driveway, landing on the bright Christmas lights that twinkled mockingly across the Hale residence. Inside, the room was decorated with garlands, wreaths, and the scent of pine and cinnamon, a picture of holiday cheer. But for Sophia, 8 months pregnant, the scene was grotesque. Her husband, Derek Hale, stood near the grand staircase, not with concern or warmth, but with a smirk and a woman's hand on his arm. The mistress, the intruder. Sophia's heart pounded violently in her chest as she tried to comprehend the scene. Derek's voice, calm yet cold, cut through the festive ambience. "I think you understand, Sophia. Things have changed. I have other priorities now." Her legs trembled beneath her, both from the shock and the weight of her pregnancy. She could barely speak. The smell of her favorite holiday cookies, meant to soothe, now felt acrid in her mouth. Snowlight danced on the polished floors outside the French windows, reflecting the horror unfolding inside. Guests were already murmuring. Whispers, polite yet dripping with judgment, circulated among family and friends who had been invited to celebrate. Some stared at Sophia with pity. Others looked at Derek and his mistress with wide-eyed fascination. It was as if her personal nightmare had been transformed into public entertainment. Sophia clutched her belly, feeling the twins shift as if sensing her fear. The contrast between festive joy and personal betrayal was unbearable. Carols played softly, champagne glasses clinked, and she felt as if she had been exiled from her own life. Tears pricked her eyes, and she swallowed hard. "This holiday nightmare won't break us," she whispered under her breath, voice quivering but determined. Even in her isolation, she promised her unborn children that she would fight, that they would survive this Christmas horror. And somewhere deep in the snow-dusted night, a silent resolve began to take root, ready to challenge everything Derek thought he controlled. Sophia remembered a Christmas long before the snow had turned bitter and the lights felt mocking. She and Derek had once celebrated with laughter that filled every corner of their first small apartment. He had carried her over the threshold into a tiny living room, the only furniture a second-hand couch and a mismatched tree. Back then, their love had been messy but real, full of hope, whispered dreams, and promises that felt unbreakable. Over the years, the romance had shifted. Derek's ambition began as a spark of drive, but soon it became a consuming fire. Late nights at the office turned into weekends lost to board meetings and networking galas. Invitations to family dinners declined politely, replaced with corporate events. Sophia watched him climb higher, cheering him on while quietly noticing the small betrayals piling up, forgotten anniversaries, unreturned calls, moments when he didn't notice her exhaustion or the subtle ache in her belly. The mistress had been introduced slowly, almost innocently. At first, Derek claimed she was a business associate who needed mentoring. Then she appeared at parties and lunches, laughter ringing too loudly for coincidence. Sophia, trusting the man she had chosen to spend her life with, tried to ignore the tension, telling herself she might be imagining things. Then came the pregnancy. Sophia had hoped it would restore the warmth, rekindle the spark, and ground Derek in the life they were building together. But instead, it revealed the truth. He no longer wanted to pause, to protect, or even to care. The twins were not seen as a blessing, but as an inconvenience, a complication to be managed or discarded. Looking back now, Sophia realized that the cracks had been forming for years. Quiet, unnoticed, but inevitable. The love that had once filled their Christmases had been eroded by ambition, selfishness, and betrayal. And now, on this snowy, cruel Christmas Eve, she was confronting the consequences of a marriage that had never been as secure as she had believed. Snow swirled around Sophia as she stumbled down the icy driveway, her breath visible in sharp white clouds. The weight of her 8-month pregnancy made each step agonizing, and her coat offered little protection against the winter wind that cut through her like a knife. She had nowhere to go. Derek had thrown her out as though she were disposable, a holiday decoration to be replaced by someone younger, prettier, and more convenient. Her hands clutched her belly instinctively, feeling the twins stir as if they knew danger was near. Panic set in, the kind that gnawed at the chest and made it hard to think. She pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed numbers, family, friends, even neighbors, but each call ended the same way. Voicemail, busy signal, or unanswered. The realization hit her with icy clarity. Tonight she was truly alone. Christmas lights flickered cheerfully across neighboring homes, casting a surreal glow on the white landscape, almost mocking her despair. Laughter and carols drifted faintly from windows, a cruel reminder that the world continued as if her suffering was invisible. The street seemed endless, snow piling higher with each gust of wind, making each step feel heavier, the night darker. A sharp cramp cut across her abdomen, sending her to her knees. Fear spiked. What if something happened to the twins? She had no doctor, no car, no one to turn to. Tears blurred her vision as she stumbled to a nearby bench, wrapping herself tightly in her thin coat, shivering uncontrollably. For a moment, she considered calling Derek, her voice trembling with desperation. But anger and grief flooded back. This was his doing. She realized she couldn't rely on him. Survival would require courage, resourcefulness, and, though she didn't yet know it, someone else entirely would come to change her fate. In that freezing, lonely night, Sophia made a silent vow to her children. "I will find a way. I will survive. And you will be safe." The snowstorm raged, but a spark of determination ignited inside her. A light in the darkness, fragile but real. Sophia's teeth chattered, and her legs ached with every step through the snow, when the roar of helicopter blades cut through the night. She looked up in disbelief, shielding her eyes from the glare of the landing lights, and her heart leapt. Could it really be? Could someone have seen her, really cared enough to act so dramatically? The helicopter descended gracefully onto the snow-dusted lawn, blades whipping the powder into swirling clouds. From the doorway, Michael, her older brother, emerged with purposeful strides, his face set in a mix of concern and determination. He was always protective, always larger than life in her memory, but tonight he seemed unstoppable. "Sophia," he called, voice carrying over the wind. "Get in. Now." Tears welled in her eyes. She had never felt such a rush of relief and astonishment all at once. Michael moved with calm efficiency, helping her into the helicopter, checking her coat, gently pressing a hand to her swollen belly. The twins shifted inside her, and she felt them respond to the reassurance in his presence. As they lifted off, the city lights shrinking below, Sophia finally exhaled, the tension in her body slowly loosening. Michael's quiet voice guided her, not with commands, but with gentle confidence. "You're safe now. Nothing will touch you or the babies. I promise." Back on the ground, Derek watched from the doorway, frozen. The pride and control he had once wielded evaporated completely. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. His mistress clung to his arm, eyes wide with disbelief, realizing that even his carefully curated image could not save him from humiliation. For Sophia, the chaos of the night was fading into clarity. She was no longer alone. Protection had arrived in the form of family, in the form of courage, and in the roar of a helicopter slicing through the snowy night. Somewhere deep in her chest, a spark of hope began to burn, fierce and undeniable. The helicopter touched down at Michael's private estate, a sprawling home perched on a hill far from the city and prying eyes. Inside, the warmth was immediate, enveloping Sophia as she stepped through the doors, her teeth still chattering and her body trembling from the cold. The twins kicked gently in response to the change, as if sensing they were finally safe. Michael guided her to a comfortable suite, soft blankets already waiting, and a fire crackling in the hearth. The faint scent of pine and fresh pastries filled the room, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital smells and the bitter wind outside. Nurses and medical professionals, handpicked by Michael, had already arrived, discreet and efficient, ready to provide round-the-clock care for both Sophia and the unborn twins. "You're safe here," Michael said softly, helping her settle onto a plush sofa. "No one is going to hurt you again. Not Derek. Not anyone." The reality of her situation began to sink in. She could finally breathe. No more fear of sudden betrayal. No more cold streets. No more helplessness. For the first time in hours or perhaps days, Sophia felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. Tears slipped freely down her face as she whispered, "Thank you. I didn't think anyone could get here in time." Michael smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Family doesn't let each other face the impossible alone. Over the next hours, Sophia received medical attention, nourishment, and reassurance. Michael's staff monitored her health and the twins' activity, ensuring that every precaution was taken. Slowly, her panic began to ebb, replaced by a sense of clarity. She realized that though the night had been horrifying, she now had a plan. She could recover, protect herself, and eventually confront the man who had tried to destroy her Christmas. Sitting by the fire with a warm blanket around her shoulders, Sophia felt the first flicker of hope since Derek had thrown her into the snow. She stroked her belly gently, speaking softly to the twins. "We're safe now. Nothing can hurt us here. And we'll make it through this, together." For the first time that night, the storm outside didn't seem terrifying. It was just snow. The real protection, the real strength was inside these walls with her brother, and in the family that would not let her fall. By morning, the news of Derek's betrayal had begun to spread. Social media posts and private messages circulated quickly, fueled by witnesses and neighbors who had seen the confrontation. Headlines hinted at scandal, family drama, and the cruel timing of Christmas Eve. Derek, who had always counted on his carefully cultivated image, found himself exposed. His business partners called, asking for explanations. Investors grew uneasy, questioning his judgment, integrity, and character. What had once been seen as a private matter was now public, and every misstep reflected on his professional reputation. Whispers in boardrooms and at holiday parties carried the story further, and Derek's carefully maintained aura of control began to crack. Meanwhile, the mistress who had once been the center of his attention found herself powerless in the unfolding chaos. Without Derek's dominance and charisma shielding her, she faded into the background, her allure diminished by the public scrutiny surrounding their actions. Home, Derek paced frantically. Calls to lawyers, publicists, and friends yielded little relief. The man who had discarded Sophia as though she were a trivial obstacle now faced consequences he hadn't anticipated. Every attempt to spin the story in his favor only deepened suspicion and amplified the humiliation. The realization hit him in a quiet, painful moment. He had underestimated the world's reaction and overestimated his invincibility. The husband who had thrown his pregnant wife into the snow for a fleeting romance was now cornered, publicly judged, and professionally vulnerable. And while Derek struggled to contain the fallout, Sophia and Michael remained shielded, safe in their haven. The contrast between them and Derek could not have been starker. One family thriving in warmth and protection, the other collapsing under arrogance, cruelty, and betrayal. For Derek, Christmas Eve had begun as a display of power and dominance, but by now it had become a cautionary tale. The world had seen who he truly was, and his empire of influence began to crumble in real time. In the days and weeks following the Christmas Eve nightmare, Sophia began to rebuild her life, brick by brick. The warmth and security provided by Michael and the carefully chosen support team gave her the space to heal physically, emotionally, and mentally. Every day, she felt a little stronger, a little more in control, and a little closer to the woman she had once dreamed of being. The twins, growing steadily and safely under professional care, became a source of determination and joy. Sophia spent her days learning to read their cues, to anticipate their needs, and to find calm in the chaos of feeding schedules, sleep deprivation, and tender moments of bonding. Each small victory reminded her that she was capable, resilient, and deserving of a life free from betrayal. With Michael's guidance, she began addressing the legal and financial protections necessary to secure her future. Property, medical expenses, and inheritance rights were all reviewed, ensuring that Derek could never again endanger her or the children. She found empowerment in these decisions, realizing that control over her own life and resources was far more satisfying than any comfort Derek had ever provided. Emotional healing became intertwined with empowerment. Sophia reconnected with close friends who had remained loyal, those who reminded her that her value was not tied to a husband's approval or a holiday gone wrong. Michael's unwavering presence strengthened their bond as siblings, a living testament to loyalty and love that no one could break. As the weeks turned to months, Sophia noticed a profound transformation within herself. She was no longer the frightened, abandoned woman shivering in the snow on Christmas Eve. She was a mother, a protector, and a decision-maker, capable of creating stability and happiness in her own terms. Late at night, she would sit by the twins, cradling them gently and whispering promises of safety and love. She knew that the past would always linger, but it no longer held power over her. What had begun as a Christmas Eve horror had blossomed into a story of resilience, family bonds, and the quiet strength of a woman determined to thrive despite betrayal. Sophia smiled softly, the firelight catching her eyes, knowing that she was no longer just surviving, she was rising. Weeks after the helicopter rescue, Derek Hale tried to re-enter Sophia's life. At first, he sent messages, then phone calls, and eventually attempted a personal visit, hoping to charm or intimidate her into reconciliation. But Sophia had changed. She was no longer the frightened, dependent woman he had discarded in the snow. She answered calmly, with a voice steady and unwavering. When he finally appeared at the estate gates, flanked by his stunned mistress, he was met not with tears or pleas, but with quiet authority. Sophia had carefully arranged the meeting, ensuring legal representation was present, and made it clear that this encounter was about closure, not negotiation. Derek tried to justify his actions, citing ambition, stress, and misplaced priorities, as if those excuses could erase the nights of fear and humiliation she had endured. Sophia listened, her expression composed. Then she spoke. "You made your choice when you threw me out on Christmas Eve. Choices define a person more than apologies ever will. The twins are safe and so am I. Nothing you do now can change that." Derek faltered, realizing for the first time that his power had dissipated. He requested to see the twins, but Sophia's decision was final. Their safety and emotional well-being came first, not his ego. She reminded him that fatherhood was more than biology. It was presence, responsibility, and care. And he had chosen absence. Michael stood nearby, silent but resolute, a protective shadow that symbolized the family bond Derek could never break. Even the mistress, once gleaming with confidence, seemed small and irrelevant, powerless against the truth of what had transpired. As Derek turned to leave, shoulders slumped and face pale, Sophia felt no bitterness, only clarity. The man who had caused so much pain had nothing left to offer. She had protection, love, and agency. For the first time since that cruel Christmas Eve, Sophia walked away feeling complete, knowing she had claimed her power, preserved her children, and closed a chapter without compromise. Months passed, and Christmas Eve became a distant memory. No longer a night of terror, but a reminder of how far Sophia had come. The twins thrived, growing healthy and strong under the watchful eyes of Sophia, Michael, and the dedicated medical team. Laughter returned to their home, soft and unhurried, echoing off walls that had once felt cold and threatening. Sophia's life had transformed entirely. No longer bound by Derek's selfishness or the public spectacle of betrayal, she embraced independence fully. She managed her affairs, oversaw the twins' care, and built a life defined by her own choices. Legal protections ensured that Derek could never endanger her family again, and the threat he once represented had dissolved into irrelevance. Michael remained a steady presence, but not an overbearing one. He respected Sophia's autonomy, offering guidance and protection when needed, allowing her to lead as the mother, decision-maker, and protector of the family. In his quiet way, he had helped her reclaim not only safety, but confidence, purpose, and pride. Over time, Sophia realized that family, courage, and loyalty were far more powerful than wealth, status, or appearances. She celebrated small victories, the twins' first steps, their laughter at snowflakes, their curiosity about Christmas lights. These moments were hers to shape, uninterrupted and safe. Derek and his mistress faded from her life completely. Their presence, once threatening and overwhelming, became irrelevant in the warmth and security she had built. Sophia had turned a night of horror into a foundation for strength, love, and resilience. As she held her children, watching their tiny fingers grasp hers, Sophia understood something profound. The darkest moments can give birth to the brightest futures. She had survived betrayal, fear, and abandonment, and now she was thriving. The past could no longer harm her. The future was hers, illuminated by courage, family, and unbreakable resolve.